Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the This Is Gonna Hurt podcast with Jay Gordon Duncan. And if you're wondering why the J, the answer is I'm not a bagpipe player. And if that joke doesn't make any sense, I encourage you to check out episode 0, where I explain that joke, as well as the purpose of the This Is Gonna Hurt podcast, where we talk about faith, family, fitness, finances, and sometimes fun. Well, friends, thank you as always. Big thanks for just your support of the last few episodes and everything's been going on. But first and foremost in my mind is today is the day after the Richmond Marathon. And I qualified for the Boston Marathon in 2026. As many of you have known who've been here year in and year out, the Boston Marathon is what I achieve, or at least strive to achieve, every single time I run a marathon. Yesterday was my 29th marathon in 15 years. I'm celebrating 15 years as a runner. And out of those 29 marathons, I have qualified for Boston only 4 times. And I have not qualified since 2019. So qualifying 5 years later is a big deal. So we're going to focus on the story of the marathon, some things that I felt like I learned about myself and achieved. This is a very running heavy episode, but I'm going to apply some lessons that I think we can take away from each other. I'm celebrating. I'm in the basement. I'm very casual. I've got my finisher hat from yesterday, and I'm drinking out of my Boston Marathon mug, which was given to me by my friend Carla. I'm going to take a sip. And guys, I've got stories to tell. Now, again, this is my 29th marathon. I've qualified. This is my 4th time. I did age up, and when you age up, they give you an extra 5 minutes, making it seemingly more easy to qualify. But then you're older, and up until a few months ago, this was the category where you didn't leap 5 minutes, but they give you 10 minutes. So once I achieved, the wonderful age of post 50, they give you 10 extra minutes, which would make qualifying fairly easy. I would have qualified twice last year at that time. But then Boston adjusted their qualifying standards in the middle of the year and took away those 5 minutes. So thankfully, I still had 12 weeks left of my training cycle to get there, but they took away 5 minutes. And this year's been tough. I started out in January unable to run with insertional hamstring tendonitis. My left leg was practically frozen. When I did run, I ran like a peg leg, like a pirate. And I had to go to physical therapy and rehab. I did a whole episode on what I had been through to get there. I've not run many races this year. I think the only thing I have run is the Marine Corps half, the July 4th 5 miler, and I think the 5K I ran a couple of weeks ago. I have not been doing races. It's been about getting healthy. It's been about more specific training than ever before. Because my whole goal was like in January when I couldn't run, it was like, okay, it's time to focus all my efforts on November on this race here. So the Marine Corps half was, can I run a half again? I didn't run that like trying to race. The July 4th 5 miler, I did race that. I wanted to place in my age, and I did. I think I came in third, and then I won the 5K. And the 5K, I had my best 5K time in almost 10 years, and so I was feeling very confident. I was healthy. I had no injuries. A couple of tweaks here. You never go into a marathon completely healthy. And I felt like if I ran a smart race, there was really no reason why I would not qualify. So to qualify, I had to run a 3 hour and 29 minute and 56 second marathon, which is no joke. That's an 8 minute pace. So let me tell you about the day before. The day before marathon in Richmond, you go down to the expo, which is held at the Richmond Speedway, and get your things. And typically, what I used to do is I would drive to Richmond, get my packet, drive home, and then drive to Richmond at like crack of dawn in the morning to run the race. The last year, my good buddy Danny had the thought, let's get a hotel room and book it months in advance, and then that way we'll be there and we don't have to do all that driving. So I headed to Richmond on Friday, and Danny and I met. We got our packet and headed to the Marriott, and the Marriott is where all the runners go the morning of the race, because the Marriott's awesome. It's a conference center and there's tons of bathrooms and there's Starbucks there, and that's really where all the runners gather. So we got a hotel room there. We got there on Friday, and it gave us a chance to just get in and relax. We went downstairs and we met Trisha and Carla and some friends of theirs for an early dinner. We're in the hotel room by like 6:30, just chilling, and it gives us a chance to rest and relax. Like everything, you're hydrating, you're getting food, you get every single thing you need, and you are prepared in the absolute best way. And we had turned the lights out by 8:30. So that meant going to bed 8:30 and getting a good night's sleep. And I'll be honest with you, I did not sleep well. I don't typically sleep well before a race or a marathon, because there's just so much energy and excitement, and you lie in bed and at least I do. I visualize the entire course. I have run Richmond now, I think 12 times. I'm not even quite sure how many times. And so I know the whole race. And so I can think through all 26 miles of the race, and I'm visualizing how I want to feel, and I'm visualizing the hills, and I'm visualizing the tough spots, and I'm visualizing myself being successful. And I couldn't sleep well, but anytime I woke up, I started thinking about that. And Danny and I had planned on doing this race a little bit differently. Danny he's younger than me about 15 years, and he has a much faster overall marathon PR than I do, about a good more than 5 minutes faster than me. But lately we have run Richmond very similarly, and he had a coach, and he'd been training really specifically, and the coach had laid out a running plan for an 8-minute mile, which is what I was looking for. And so Danny and I, like, let's just run the whole thing together. So we said, let's do that. And we line up. It's a beautiful morning, race day morning. It's chilly, 43, which is what you want. It's going to heat up quickly, and that can be dangerous. But we're like, let's be really specific. So I'm running with music. I just run my marathons with music, but I'm running with Danny. And honestly, the first 4 or 5 miles, I let Danny set the pace, and our goal was to go out, slowly, 8:15, 8:20, and ease our way into an 8-minute mile. And so we do. It's chill. We're just out running. We know that around 5 or 6, there's a little bit of where the race begins, to get a little bit hilly, but nothing bad. And then at mile 7, there's a huge downhill, and the goal is to gain some seconds there. And then you do a U-turn and you head into the rapids. Now, the rapids is my favorite part of the race, I guess, other than the finish line, because it's peaceful. The crowd has thinned out from there. You're not worried about bumping into people. And for me, every time I run Richmond, I use that portion to do what I call settling in. How are you doing? I should be running smoothly. I should be warmed up. I should know how my body's doing. And right before that, I had, strangely enough, an epiphany. I'm like, wait a minute. If I run step by step with Danny at an 8-minute pace for 3:30, that means that just all of a sudden at the end, I'm supposed to have a surge to qualify for Boston. I'm like, that's not going to work. I need to run faster. I need to run a 7:56, 7:57, and that means I need to put some mileage down now. And Danny and I have a relationship running, like, we always tell each other, just run your own race. So we had planned on running the whole race together, but at mile 8, I began to separate from him, and I started putting down some 7:57s. And the wonderful thing is, it's in my favorite part of the race. It's the rapids, and I'm listening to my music. And my daughter Meredith has shared songs with me. One of them is "Just Can't Get Enough" by Depeche Mode. It's very upbeat, poppy. And when I made that decision to start making a move, that song came on, and I was like, I've made the right decision. I mean, when you're running and these songs come up providentially in marathons, they mean something. And I'm like, this is the right decision. I felt bad. I didn't get to tell Danny that I was leaving, but I know we do this. We're like, you run your own race. That's what you always do. Even if you say, let's run the whole thing together. If you need to slow down, great. If you need to speed up, do it. No one cares. I was like, Danny will be fine. I hate I didn't tell him. And I started putting down some mileage. Excuse me, but this morning I'm going to drink my coffee. 7:57 after 7:57. And then miles 10 to 13 to the halfway point, I have a lot of hills, and you have to slow down to do well. They really do. But I hit the halfway mark, the half marathon mark, like right at an 8-minute mile. I'm like, okay, not halfway here, but I have to get faster to qualify for Boston. I can't just qualify at the exact second. That's too risky. And guys, mile 13 was spiritual. I took off, like I felt good. I was not pushing. I looked down at my watch. I was running like a 7:13. I think that mileage, the pace evened out to about 7:30. I felt very good at mile 13, very good at mile 14. And I'm headed towards what breaks everybody, which is this large on-ramp onto the James River Bridge. Long bridge, can be very windy. Then you have a slight uphill at 16, and then you turn left on VCU campus. That breaks so many runners. It's broken me. It got me last year. One of my favorite running songs came on while I was onboarding onto the bridge. It's a song called Night Stalker by Megadeth. It's a silly song, but it's a motivational song for me. And I was doing great on the bridge, and then something wonderful happened. At the end of the bridge, I passed the 3:30 pace group. Now, in a marathon, they have pace groups for about every 15 minutes. And these are people who volunteer to run, and they hold up a sign. And if you want to run that pace, you can just run the whole race with them, and they'll get you there at that pace. So I passed the 3 hour and 30-minute pace group, which means, okay, every second that I'm ahead of that group, I qualify for Boston. So I can tell myself, as long as that group never passes me, I will qualify for Boston. Wonderful. So I make the left on the VCU campus, and that's where I always see my daughter Meredith. She lives in Richmond. She gives me a high five, and I'm calling out her name, and she's not there. And I think I'm faster than I told her I would be there, and Meredith would be there. I was worried because I'm like, this is going to make her worry, make everybody worry, but she's not there. And it's just I got there faster than I told her I would. And then there's a straight stretch for the end of 16, all of 17, that takes you up to Arthur Ashe Boulevard. And that's a slight uphill. Same thing. I'm running well. I'm running in high sevens. You turn right onto Arthur Ashe, and that is a straight shot until over the bridge of 95. And mile 18, I think I did a 7:37. Like I was feeling wonderful. It's like, now is the time to bank some minutes, because no matter what, the ending is hard. And I mean, it's like, now is the time. And I looked down, and I think I hit a 7:56 pace, but it was most of the time it was 7:57. I was like, okay, I've got a little bit of buffer here. Keep going. Mile 20, I'm doing well. And then mile 21 is when I'm starting to feel the pain. Like that's the proverbial wall, where your glycose levels or glycogen levels are running out of your muscles. But I'm holding it in there. 22, I drop into eights, like an 8:06, I think, something like that. And I'm starting to get calf twitches, not full calf cramps, but twitches. And I'm beginning to suffer. 20 mile 23 was an 8 something. And every time I'm over 8, I'm losing my buffer. And so I am doing marathon math. I hate doing marathon math. Like I'm telling myself, I think I could run 8.5-minute mile pace all the way to the end and still qualify. But I just keep telling myself, they don't give away Boston qualifiers. They don't give away Boston qualifiers. That's my mantra. They don't give this away. Like, this is what it's hard for. And then I also tell myself, I didn't do all this work. I didn't rehab and do a 16-week training cycle to lose this at the very end. But at mile 24, I am suffering. I'm still in the eights, but I'm like, I look at my watch and it's an 8:20 something. That's a big chunk of time to lose. And something magical happened. The 3:30 pace group literally bumped into me. And I thought, if they pass me, I don't qualify. And I didn't think I had anything, but like, if they pass me, I've lost all of this. And I found a gear. That bump was the best thing. And I took off. Like I just sprinted the best I could. I was like, you have to put space between them. Mile 25 was solid. And guys, my 26th mile was like a 7:40. It was like my fifth fastest mile on the whole course. And then in Richmond, the finish is downhill, but the final 0.2 is a big downhill. Like you can almost tumble. It's so downhill. And I wanted to cross with the race clock sub 3:30. You see, the race clock in your time are different because when the race clock goes off, it takes you a minute or so to get to the starting line. So there's two times going. I wanted to beat the race clock to just make sure. And I looked up and I had like 15 seconds to beat the race clock. And I took off and I beat the race clock. I think when I crossed the finish line, my pace was a 5 minute and 59-second mile, which I couldn't have sustained at all. And literally, one of the folks at the end caught me. Like I was about to tumble and fall over. They caught me. And had to help me walk. Like my body was in trembles and shivers, and I was. I mean, I told myself I'm going to enjoy this one. I'm going to enjoy this one. And they're like, "Are you okay?" They had to help me walk. I got my medal. I made sure my medal was a 26.2 because they're also giving out the 13.1s at the same time. And um, I voice text the family, and all I say is Boston. And they just, I'm getting chills right now. They start sending me all the congrats. There was a woman beside me who heard me, and she said, I just qualified for Boston too. And I was like, congrats. And she beat me by like 2 minutes. And we talked for a brief moment. And I was like, this means so much to me. This is the first time I've qualified in my 50s. And she says, well, this is the first time I've qualified since I had a baby. And I said, well, you win. You win. But there's that kind of camaraderie at the end of at the finish line. And you go through this little corral and they give you a blanket, like a Richmond blanket, like for not one of those shiny ones, like a real blanket. And you put it on, you start freezing, like you just get cold. It was 65 degrees, but I was freezing. And they give you, I grabbed a banana, and then it was off to find my friends. Carla and Trish had run the half. I had no idea where Danny was. Um, they give you pizza and water and beer and all this stuff, and it was so good to sit down. I was worried about Danny. Didn't hear from him. Apparently, the back half of the race was really tough for him. He had to find a table to sit down, and was not doing well. But he recovered, and then we all laugh and we tell stories, and then we go to Legends Brewery and we eat there and we get big double bacon cheeseburgers. And it was just an amazing day. Of the four times I qualified, the most special was the first time, because Amy and the girls got me across the finish line. This was almost as special as this, and I think I was in a place to celebrate it, and that was important. The other times I never got to celebrate it. This one I just really celebrated it. I was like, I sat and I thought about how far, like how long this year has been to get back to being a runner again and to be competitive. And the first time I'd qualified in 5 years, and there were moments where I really thought, I don't know if I'm going to get it back. I mean, with running, you just keep trying to re-achieve what you've done before. And as you get older, you're like, what can I do to get there? And as you face injuries, I mean, I'm fortunate in 15 years. I mean, I've really only had three major injuries, but in the last five, I've had a bad stress fracture, and then this insertional hamstring tendonitis, which just took me out. I mean, those are huge injuries, and I'm thankful to be back. I mean, I really am. I don't know what the future holds. My next race is the Run Big Land 10-4, but that's in January. Like I don't know what I'm going to do right now. I'm not worried about it. This next week is really about recovery. But the thing I love about running is it makes you constantly challenge yourself. Like if you're going to compete, constantly challenge yourself. I mean, this is my fourth fastest marathon ever at 54. 29 marathons, and this is my fourth fastest. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to beat my PR. My PR is a 3:23:58, and this was a 3:28:44. That's fine. I'm about 5 minutes slower PR wise, maybe a faster course. I don't know. I don't know if I even want to try to figure out what that is right now. Maybe. But it yesterday, with friends at Legends, and then coming home, and Amy and Emma were just so sweet to me, and Amy made an amazing meal. My adrenaline was so heavy, I couldn't even sleep last night. I stayed up late. I just sat in bed watching movies. This is not something I ever do, but testing my limits and finding out where they exist and what can be broken is what this my limits can be. It was like, this is what this marathon has been like. So all of this does not guarantee that I run the 2026 Boston Marathon. There's a double qualifying system. You get in, and then you wait and see how many people have qualified, and then whether you get in or not. We will see. I won't know until September. But right now, I've got that BQ out of the way, and if I want to run another marathon to try to improve that time, I can. But right now, today is about recovery, drinking and coffee and eating, and all the things that just are fun the day of. But guys, I appreciate you tuning in. I know this is run heavy. There's a lot of lessons I think I've learned, and maybe a couple that you can take away from this. And I just look forward to talking to you guys all again next week. Thanks so much for always being here and listening to my running stories. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.